Hello, members of CRC. My name is Mariah Thomas. I've been a member now for probably almost 20 years, and Rabbi Randy asked me to make a video for the Jews of Color um, thing they have going on. So, I'm a Jew by birth, and I'm biracial. Grew up in University City in the 80s, 90s, in a time where there weren't a lot of biracial people, much less Jewish. So I experienced some discrimination there growing up. It wasn't horrible, but it was enough to remember as a child into an adult. I became a police officer when I was 24, and at the time I became a police officer, things were, we had our fair share of problems, but it wasn't anything like it was today. I took a 5-year break from law enforcement, and at that time Ferguson occurred, and there was not a lot I could do as a former police officer. A lot of the things that occurred were painful in many ways, not just from the law enforcement aspect of it. I also have 2 sons that are black. One of my sons is also a part Mexican, so it's, trying to raise them in a world where they understand they aren't less than anyone else. I'm not less than anyone else. Being a police officer too, they expect you to pick a side of the fence to lean on, but I'm human first before I'm a police officer, and I do understand there are some things that are just flat out unjust and wrong, and I'll always speak out against that. And there's also things that are justifiable, and I'll also speak out against that too. There's a lot of racism in many workplaces, and the police departments are no different. There's a lot of internal conflict and racial disparities that I've myself have faced in my line of work, and it's unfortunate, but it doesn't escape police departments, it doesn't escape hospitals, it doesn't escape any work environment. Knowing that I still go out and do what I do, and I do it for the greater good, not because of the glory of wearing a badge or because I was bullied in high school. I generally want to help people and make their lives better, and I realized after taking 5 years off that there was still work that needed to be done, and I don't think I'll go out and change the world in the ways that Gandhi and everybody else did, but at the same time I do want to be the change that I want to see in the world, and that can only start with people like me, and also learning to listen to the other side and understand why do people feel the way they feel. And when you realize when situations like George Floyd happen, there's a clear problem in our country when it comes to law enforcement and police brutality and things like that. That's nothing that I shy away from. It is something that needs to be talked about. And unfortunately, some police officers are scared to come out and say things because of retaliation, and it's unpopular. But when you're a minority and you're a police officer and you see things like this happen, you just can't sit idly by and not talk about it. So also, when you have black children, what do you say to them? This is the world that we're raising them in, and you don't want them to go out into the world and hating all police, and you don't want them to go out into the world and hate all white people. Their grandmother, my mother, is white. Most of our family that we have contact with are white, and I have these 2 beautiful black boys, and they've never encountered within our family racism, but I'm sure when they walk outside of my walls, they've encountered it. And my oldest is in the military, and he fights for a country which sadly doesn't fight for him. And I've gotten in trouble before for saying that, but it's absolutely true. When he comes home and he's out of uniform, he's just another black kid walking the streets that people could be scared of. And he's just like me. He's a goofy kid. He doesn't intend on hurting anyone. My younger son is part Mexican, so he gets the wrath of having the last name that's Hispanic and people giving him a side eye to wonder if he's legal. So, it's one of those things where I've had to discuss with my younger child that he's not going to be deported, that he's an American citizen by birth anyway, but because his last name is Flores, he has a hard time ahead of him, and he doesn't even realize it. But again, I've raised my kids to not be scared of the world, to go out there and realize, you're black men, the world's not always going to be appreciative or, respectful of you, but always treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's the way I was raised. My dad was black. He always instilled in us, we're no better than anyone, we're no worse than anyone, and people that have a problem with our black Jewishness, it's their problem. So that's kind of what I've raised my kids to believe too, is there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with America. And this is the world we live in. And not to get substantially political, but I mean, yeah, it's the world we live in. You got people who think it's okay to call other people racial names. We got people who think it's okay to make it harder to just live. You got people calling folks on the police when you're just using a pool at a hotel and you paid money just like everyone else to be at said hotel to use the pool. You got people calling the police on folks in restaurants for not wearing a mask because they're trying to actually eat food. If they create a mask where you can eat food without taking it off, I'll buy it. But in this country, minorities do have a hard time just going about their daily business just to live. I've had people grab their purses while I walk by them, and I make $60,000 a year. I can buy whatever purse I want, but it's what way I look. It's having my black children with me, or my nephew who's just like a son to me, who's black also. But they see my kids and they think, oh my goodness, we must be thieves. And I've had it happen more times than I can count. We've been followed around stores. When I'm out with my mother, who, like I said before, is white, little Jewish lady, they look at they look at us kind of crazy until I call her mom, and they're just like, oh, that's her mom. But even if it wasn't my mom, who cares? But I have to say, back going to my law enforcement experience, I've always treated people, again, the way that I would want to be treated if I were in that situation. I don't care if they were black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever color of the spectrum they are. They got treated the way they were deserving to be treated in that moment. And I've gotten through 15 years or so of my career in law enforcement with that mentality. There's no one out in the world that can say that, oh, Officer Thomas treated me badly, and treated me badly because of the color of my skin. I worked in University City for about 13 years of that career, and growing up there and working there was great. I loved it until I didn't, and it was time to leave and raise my kids. But at the end of the day, University City is probably one of the most diverse places I've ever lived in, worked for, went to school, and their police department to this day is still pretty diverse. They have a good number of all races of police officers that represent the community for which they work. Unfortunately, you find yourself working with people that don't have the same values and mentality that you have, and I've seen officers pick on folks of different races for no reason, and I've called them out on it. And it's not popular, but all the same time it needs to be done. This isn't the world that I expected to leave for my children, to have to teach them and tell them you have to be more careful because of the color of your skin and the way that you're perceived versus if they were white. And some people will think that's an argument that doesn't need to be had, but until you've been in a position where you've had to tell your child as a police officer to act like you have sense in front of the police, then that's a conversation we all need to have as parents. It doesn't matter what race your child is. But because my children are black, it's a conversation that I've had to have with them. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Don't do anything crazy. Don't smart mouth. Don't do all of these things because you don't want to make the officer mad and beat on you or take you into jail or any of that. Again, I treat everybody's child how I would expect for my child to be treated in that situation, and I now work for a university. So it doesn't change. You still have to be better than what people think you are. Police right now in this country do have a hard time, and there are injustices, and that is no secret. If you truly believe that there's no social injustice in this world when it comes to law enforcement, you're kidding yourself. And I work in law enforcement, and I see it a lot, and it breaks my heart because I'm just one person. I can't control or fix every single police department or every single bad heart that's out there. But uh, I do try my best to treat everybody fairly, and I do try my best to make sure that everybody goes home at the end of the day. And I realize that there are things in this world that need to be changed. Not every black person's a criminal. Not every white person's a racist. We've all seen those pictures, but it's true. But we also need to realize and live by that, and realize that if you see somebody walking down the street, if they're suspicious, they're suspicious. My rule of thumb is always, would I stop that person regardless of what race they are? And if the answer was yes, they got stopped. If the answer was no, and it was just me trying to figure out, well, who lives where or who's doing what, until somebody or that person did something that was suspicious, I didn't care. People are saying, oh, police officers need to have 2 to 4 years of training. Well, there's plenty of good police officers in the world that had the same 6 months of training I did and were perfectly fine. Do I think that there should be more training on certain things? Absolutely. But 2 years, 4 years is a little uncharacteristic. We need to change the way we think about policing also. It's not just you want to go in there and carry a badge and gun and think that everything you say is law. You still have to treat people with common decency and respect. It's one thing that's taught, that the badge is a symbol of public trust, and right now the public doesn't trust us, and they have a lot of reasons to. But police officers and the police law enforcement community also needs to bridge that gap into working with the community in which they serve. If you're not familiar or you don't know what's going on in your community, and you don't know, again, who lives where and who belongs where, then you're opening yourself up to stopping people that are part of your community. One of the best parts of living and working for University City is I knew a lot of people, and they knew me. So, if you don't know your community, get out of the car, talk to people, get to know the people you serve. Because that badge is not a symbol of I'm a police officer and I get to do and say whatever I want to say. And yes, we are sworn to protect and serve, but when we fail to protect and serve, we're not doing our jobs. It's not our jobs to go out there and harass at will. Yes, we get a lot of alerts that say person of race A is a suspect. And granted, yes, do we stop people based off of alerts? Absolutely. But we also need to realize that it's not just proportionate to black men. There's a lot of crime that white people occur. I understand that. Most police officers understand that. And at the end of the day, really, I would just hope that more of us called out the ones that do so much wrong and not worry about retaliation for our jobs. Because there's a handful of police that have been fired for doing the right thing. And there's a handful or more, actually, not even a handful. There's a crazy bunch of cops that just go around and do things because nobody says anything. And that's not right either. And I don't come on here to say all police are good. We know we have a problem. I, however, go and try to live the way that I work as the way I live my life. Be fair, treat people how I want to be treated. Again, if I were in that situation, if I was being a jerk, I probably deserve to be treated like a jerk. But if I'm being treated with respect, or I'm treating said person I encounter with respect, then, that's just where it starts. And I also realize that it's easier said than done. Getting people to trust the police again after so much has gone on in the world, I don't blame people for feeling the way that they feel. But as a police officer of color and being Jewish, we are not all out to hurt anyone. We are not all out. We don't wake up every day thinking we're going to go out there and save the world, or we're going to go out there and shoot someone. I mean, understandably, yes, some things happen and some things shouldn't happen. I understand that too. My ultimate goal as a human being in this world, in being a police officer, is just, again, to bridge the gap in the community of which I serve, and help other officers who are fearful for saying things or coming forward to also be comfortable in pointing out things that are just wrong. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. And all I ask is sometimes when you encounter the police, as hard as it may sound, we are not all out to hurt you. And all I can ask is that you give those police that you need help from the benefit of the doubt and understand that, yes, most of us do not and will not ever support bad police. There's a saying that every cop or every bad cop, good cops don't like it. I don't know exactly how it goes, but I think you understand the gist of what I'm trying to say. Nobody likes a bad cop more than a good cop. But being a police officer of color too has its downfalls because other people of color were like, you're a traitor. They expect you to, side with them, or we are Uncle Toms, if you will. But at the same time is police need people of color. It can't be a broad spectrum of white faces or Asian faces or anything like that. We need people of color in law enforcement. It's not to protect other people of color, but at the end of the day, on one hand, you can't want people of color to be law enforcement and then yell at us because we're law enforcement. So we try. We really do try to be good. And don't get me wrong, there's rogue black police officers too. So it's not just putting one race or anything against the other. I mean, across the board, there's a lot of reform that needs to be done in police work. And I, for one, am willing to be part of that. I would love to speak more to that. I'm not an educator or anything. I'm just a normal police officer that just goes out to do my job, and I hope I make it home every night. And I realize that everyone out there is someone's child. So being a mother, that's how I encounter everything that I do. And hopefully that message has gotten across to you all, and you can take it for what it is. But I do love my job. I love being black. I love being Jewish. I love being a woman. I love being all these things. And all these things too, unfortunately have, I'm going to say a downside, but it's sad to be a person in this world and see what it's coming to, that I got to turn around and worry about, such and such is worried that I'm going to steal something from them, or I walk into a store and I'm followed around. So it happens. When I take that uniform off, I'm still black, I'm still a minority, I'm still Jewish. But when I'm in the uniform too, I'm proud to wear it. I'm proud to stand by what the public has entrusted me to do. And hopefully more police officers across the world, regardless of their race, will stand up for the right things and speak out against the wrong ones. Thank you.